They gotta be designed differently. You know, if you're talking about in your parking lot area, there's too much tree coverage for that. They would just, you would have maybe an hour and a half, 2 hour window on a daily basis that you get decent exposure.
Let's say you didn't have tree cover. At some point, we're probably gonna have, we talked about a pole barn we'd like to have. A roof just seems like a much more efficient use of the space, in part because you're doubling up on the use. You're already putting stuff in the building, and you've got a peak that's
Well, so these won't
already
be flat,
amenable.
these will be
Right.
these will be angled.
right, but there's nothing you can do underneath. That land is
Right.
eaten up.
Yeah,
Whereas with a carport, you get the, or a house, any building,
Workshop, yeah.
you get the dual use.
yeah, I think you're adding a lot of expense. To
Well, I'm
the
thinking about the
structure.
18 houses that are unbuilt that should have solar panels.
They
Well, so-
couldn't be
Oh,
back there.
Yeah, and the other thing
No.
would be is when we attach them to a house, that by this being a community, for this to be a community solar project, it's an independent operating array that is built strictly for that purpose of selling that production back the same way the utility does.
Right.
Putting it on multiple roof spaces, you know, we would then be interconnecting it at multiple different points. I don't know if that would
Yeah, I
fit,
think
I don't
he's
know.
just talking about like regular rooftop.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
he's saying
Just the
that-
value
yeah.
of one versus the other, yeah.
Yeah, I guess I'm concerned about the moral hazard of building a power plant for other communities. I like the idea of having power generated on site for the users. There's no incentive for efficiency for the people that use these that live elsewhere.
Mhm.
They can just build a McMansion and then just buy solar and you know, they're green because there's a solar farm somewhere.
Right.
And when that land is used up, then move to another piece of land and,
But I don't think the fact that they can get solar is what's causing them to build the McMansion.
Exactly.
So they're gonna build the McMansion anyway, and they're
Right.
gonna power it with coal. So at least, you know, this way it's, the more solar we build, the less greenhouse gas emissions from the electricity sector.
I don't think it necessarily impacts coal because, or any other source. You're not necessarily, if you're increasing the supply of solar panels, you're not putting any downward pressure on fossil fuels.
You are. So Maryland has what's called.
Because you're just using more land.
No, but we have, I mean, first of all, we are, I'm in favor of efficiency first, for sure. You know, reduce what you use first, number one. Cleanest electron is the one you don't use.
Right.
But we do have in Maryland, the Empower Maryland program, which is reducing electricity usage on a per capita basis. You know, part of what we could do is, and what we're about as a company, is educating the public about how to be better stewards of the earth and have a smaller carbon footprint. So I'm with you on that. And we can't force everybody to live the way we want. It's gonna take time and education and other efforts.
The other thing I'm seeing is, I think,
Yeah.
I mean, we have to look at what our power consumption is right now here, but it seems to me that if we're built out to 38 units, which is the top end here, that this is not gonna be that much bigger than in production than what I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, that's
If
you're up to
all those,
38 units,
if
yeah.
all those things line up, and you know, and Tom already has 30 panels, so he doesn't need it on the 9158, but
Yeah,
I think it's pretty appropriately sized to the community we envision. It might take a little diddling to get it to all
Right.
work out that way, but
I mean, it also gives you guys the opportunity to be a community educator. So the folks outside of the community who don't use the power, who use the power, you know, they'll know where it's coming from, and we can
Yeah,
help
it's
educate
good
them.
marketing. I mean, if
Yeah.
I'm opening a studio in downtown Frederick, I could tap into, you know, this and use that to power the studio, and then I can,
Yeah.
I mean,
Absolutely.
and then
Yeah.
to reach out to other businesses until we sell the other lots,
and
especially.
honestly, if
Yeah.
you wanted to go to the common market,
Like
I mean,
Mike
we already have
effectively.
a mandate to use the cleanest energy, the localest energy we can get.
Right.
Right now, I don't know what we're getting, but I'd have to look it up.
Yeah,
But the amount of electricity a supermarket uses, you
Oh,
know,
God.
it's a lot.
Oh, yeah.
whatever you could make, they would be able to use. And so it wouldn't be a McMansion, it'd be something, you know, a community thing. And it wouldn't, I think actually the idea that releasing some of the shares back to residents might be a very reasonable thing to do in that sort of situation.
Mhm.
Okay, but I mean, I'm glad to hear Mike's
Yeah, but Mike
ideas.
I don't have much
There-
argument with
There's-
Mike, I
there's
wanna
an
add
answer
some other
that
things.
Ryan, yeah, okay.
So, you had talked about it not really necessarily having an impact on overall fossil fuel production, when actually, the state of Maryland has what's called a Renewable Portfolio Standard, or an RPS, that mandates that a certain amount of electricity each year be met by renewables, and that, it continuously increases. And the more that we add to that, that limits the amount that polluters can continuously try to meet demand by that. Now granted, a lot of factors go into that, you know, you do have urban sprawl, which is dominating Frederick. But altogether, that's intended to reach a large percentage of the overall use in the state. And so that's void of federal policy, that is state policy. And so it is, in fact, every time a solar panel goes on there, it is limiting how much fossil fuel companies can put onto the grid, because we're offsetting them on the grid. And this would be no different. I mean, the community solar legislation, I know has an impact on the RPS, but it is an independent piece of legislation that has its own mandates to meet, and all of that is combined to again, try and make Maryland a very green state.
Which I know, that's what you'd like to see too. I mean, I'm thinking,
Sure, but growth is going to happen, so
Mhm.
if we're talking about meeting that percentage, we're constantly chasing that,
What
there's
percentage?
gonna be a population growth, so we're chasing that upwards.
Well, currently,
Right.
last legislative session, they did put forth a bill to expand that by I believe 5%, and it did get vetoed.
Yeah, no, but he's right, he's
But it's gonna
right.
have to
But-
be like 25% of the population and then
Yeah.
30% of the population, so it's gonna be a much.
But that population keeps growing.
Right, so it's gonna
Right.
So the
but-
percentage has to,
But
It's gonna
that's
have-
where, I mean, we're kind of mixing apples and oranges here. The solar legislation is completely different. We have energy efficiency legislation, Empower Maryland, you guys pay it on all your electric bills. And the idea there is that even if we have population growth, if you're reducing the overall electricity use in the entire state, it's, you know, that's still a positive thing. And so, Maryland is actually getting more efficient as a state, believe it or not, more, you know, and California is the leader, and they use, the average Californian uses half, the average Californian house uses half the electricity that the national average.
wow.
So there are ways
They
to
have
get
so
there.
much-
So
Yeah.
did it make sense? Your idea that we don't wanna make electricity for all of Frederick County, that it sounds like this size power plant, it kind of fits with the size of the community in general terms, what John was saying. You know, like, one of your concerns, I think I heard you say, was, oh, I don't wanna make power for all those people out there. If we arrange this ideally, it's about 30-something, maybe 40-something houses, and that's about what we have here. I mean, did that sink in? Did that
And,
make
and
sense?
power would be saved for those houses.
I'm just,
it wouldn't, it wouldn't,
doesn't
it wouldn't
answer,
be
it
saying.
wouldn't be
doesn't answer your thing about,
Probably.
it doesn't encourage conservation.
It doesn't.
No, not necessarily, but it does cut down on,
That's not a reason not to do it.
I agree, but it doesn't, but it does cut down on greenhouse gases. by
It
doing
does
this way.
increase the use of resources. We need resources to make the solar panels, to mine some of the
I
other
understand,
elements.
so I don't see not doing this as better than doing this. It's not a perfect solution, but I see doing it as better than not doing it. That's just my take, but I'm happy to hear your thoughts.
I think we're talking about solar. I absolutely think solar's a good way to go. I just,
Yeah, yeah.
But if each household that's subscribing to solar, they're not subscribing to coal. So it is replacing coal usage for every household that chooses to go solar.
I think it's a land usage, I'd rather have it on the houses as well, but the cost to a land, or to a homeowner is like, you know, $10,000 versus this is.
30,000.
Well, I don't know, okay, Florida.
Anyway.
There's a bunch of grants right now, I mean, anyways, I know what you're saying, I love that I bought a house, 'cause I love I love the way it looks, I love the idea of the permaculture, that's just me, but not everyone's gonna wanna pay $30,000 and
Well, and about 80% of the market can't get rooftop solar.
Right.
So right
funny in
now,
Florida, like,
solar
the
is
return
only for
investment
kind of the
doesn't work.
elite and the people who can afford it and have the right house and all that.
Right.
Community solar opens it up for everybody.
It's 25 years, I think that's other,
Yeah,
that's a lot of,
Yeah.
that's
and it's a
lot of-
price that's going down each year,
Right,
because
will
in
hit
real,
bottom.
in real dollars,